Good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome back to the Banff News Network. If you're watching the live stream a few seconds ago, or if you're just catching up, we are talking about a lot of topics to include the WHO and the virus and how that kind of played out throughout the pandemic. Something interesting to note is that everybody that had a hand in it kind of made a lot of money, and people that were subjugated to it didn't make as much, which is kind of interesting. I want you guys to really think about that as we cover some of these topics. Open up an email for myself. Okay, I'm gonna upload this document onto the Banff News Network. You'll be able to read this document for yourself. It's created by me, researched through sources that I was forced to research through, regretfully, but I'm sharing it with you guys now. The message, excuse me, the message that we have to talk about in the end of the show, I hope we get to, but my significant other might show up and the show might be cut short. But here we go. I'm going to read this and then you guys can decide if you enjoy it. I am under the pandemic. This paper will detail current. So for you to fully understand what happened, you would need to know exactly what happened for the world to fall into such a state of fear. Now, as we exit it without the fear of the pandemic, it's great ideas from the government, which we're going to talk about, because of the science has finally caught up to the vibes. The idea that a virus like COVID-19 can spread and be economically disastrous while providing extreme wealth and connections for a small group is kind of odd. I believe the WHO, an organization, used the COVID-19 outbreak as an opportunity to grow its global stance and power, which people that don't know what power is the ability to civically have things done. Like my stuff shipped from one country to another, your stuff not shipped from one country to another. As of July 7th, 2022, there was a peer review done from the Journal of Medicine that shows a conclusion that there is no discernible difference in the protections against the BA1 and the BA2 infections were seen with previous infections, vaccinations, and hybrid immunities. Okay, now I'm going to unpack just that little part for a second, because honestly, having the ability to research that and study that now versus what unfolded. So we know now that a hybrid immunity, whether you're vaccinated and have caught COVID-19 or previously infected and potentially catching COVID-19 again, or fully vaccinated and not caught COVID-19, you're more than likely to be similar to any of your peers, vaccinated or non-vaccinated. And just so you guys have the article for that, you could Google it if you really need it. But for me, this means that, as you'll see, the WHO steps in to ensure the world responds to COVID-19. So the World Health Organization, with no evidence, issues a pandemic with zero understanding. The idea that people were getting sick wasn't misconstrued. That was evident. But the mortality of people getting sick and then fatality coming from that sickness turns out was so low and has always been so low that people's reaction, investment in vaccines, issuing of quarantines, suppression of growth, some people's growth, right? Like not everyone's. And the creation of backdoor channelizations for spying, for trade silently, for bureaucracy. Like how much of this stuff stood up and created artificial need. Like there was no need for people to have a PCR test prior to flying to Hawaii, then receiving another PCR test from a company that never needed to exist, from test equipment that never needed to be built, for people that never needed it to be administered to them. Something I do give recognition to. What were you supposed to do? It was kind of like people get mad at George W. Bush, the former president, for reacting to 9/11 the way he did. What were you supposed to do? You know? So am I sitting there mad that Mayor de Blasio didn't have all the right answers? No, I'm not. Is it weird that a lot of decisions made by these mayors were possibly unconstitutional and nobody said anything? Like, we have mayors telling people not to go outside, governors locking down states, saying that if you're not essential, stay home. And for what? They built 5G towers everywhere. So you didn't notice? Like, where did that tree come from? You know, like, no, it wasn't that though, guys. And that's why it's very important to understand why the WHO is outlining this. So something we learned that the COVID-19 demonstrated that persons who are older and had underlying medical conditions like Social Security recipients, Medicare recipients, or people that resided in poor neighborhoods, the majority suffered disproportionately from the SARS-2 infection. Why? Did anybody ever get the answer to that? Don't worry, we're going to look into that one too. But it was interesting how nobody knew how to react to COVID-19 except for the WHO. Matter of fact, the WHO not only set the precedence, but they're the ones that issued the whole global pandemic. Here's the timeline. A pneumonia case in China in December reported to the WHO, 31st, 2019. They followed up with an incident report. By the 13th of January, the WHO confirmed the first case outside of China. By the 27th of January, the WHO assessed very high global level. By the 30th of January, emergency committees reconvened and recommended to all countries should prepare for containment within 30 days. Interestingly enough, on February 3rd, the director of the WHO called for there not to be travel restrictions because they're generally ineffective and counterproductive. On March 2nd, the director announced that containment of the virus must still be international top priority. By March 3rd, the release of the Strategic Preparedness and Response Plan to help protect countries was issued. 3 months in, the WHO is issuing this. In March 2020, the WHO stated that the pandemic could be controlled if countries took this pandemic seriously. The very next day, the WHO launched the COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund to support their work in containing the COVID-19 pandemic. Go on their website, they'll tell you they made like $200-something million before they stopped receiving funds there and directed people to donate funds at the WHO Foundation. Something found from an evaluation done in 2021 of the Solidarity Response Fund. It says it was highly successful in meeting the moment of early and positioning itself effectively to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. They're pretty much saying that they were there to respond to this pandemic that the WHO told everybody to be in. If you read from their website, to ensure that the foundation has no conflict of interest when distributing funds to a program and to avoid any association with a particular donor to the WHO Foundation, funds generated by its resources, mobilized efforts are aggregated before disbursement to a recipient, and the disbursement of funds is governed by agreements, including requirements on how funds are used. This agreement, for example, governs the use of funds raised by the WHO Foundation and distributed to WHO's COVID Solidarity Response Fund to fund the implementation of its Strategic Preparedness and Response Plan, which really loops the money it gets back into its own hands. So they just issue money into the response plan after they get money into this fund that's just ran off of donations. This is after they asked for $31 billion. So you ask yourself, what did the WHO and the UN finally come up after taking and using all the money provided to them. According to the joint evaluation of the COVID Solidarity Fund, interviews outlined that there was an early recognition by the WHO and partners that the fund could not and should not be just about fundraising, but that it also provide a platform for public health messaging. The key message disseminated centers around 5 things you can do to stop the spread of COVID. Wash your hands, social distance, good mental health, know your symptoms, and give. I kid you not. Which was used consistently in the fund's digital outreach. This was thought by interviewees to have such a significant amplifier effect for the WHO and its ability to broadcast these messages, as it was able to reach a lot younger people through digital audiences and reach constituents with these messages who were not aware of the WHO's. So since they told everyone to wash their hands and want to spread their reach, it's pretty sad. For us as Americans to not want answers, because we do. I think our senators and our congressmen in the House should seek these answers. Why was the pandemic a pandemic? Who was really the who? I feel like a lot of questions haven't been answered, and the American people deserve to know, because it's very awkward that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, and the WHO just happened to be able to pull the mask over everybody's eyes and make millions off of what possibly could be something that was leaked from a lab. Follow for more on the Banff News Network. Remember, Jesus loves you guys. Don't stop believing. God is good.